Stage 6, Identity and Meaning Updating. The new you post letting go. We've arrived at the final stage, which in many ways is an ongoing evolution rather than a finish line. Stage 6 is about consolidating all the changes by integrating them into your identity and worldview. It's the point where you no longer feel defined by what you let go of, but rather by who you've become through the process. Think of it as updating your life's narrative. Earlier, your narrative might have been, I am the person who was deeply wronged by my friend, and I carry that bitterness. Or, I'm the person who failed at my dream, and my best years are behind me. After working through the stages, you get to author a new narrative. I'm a person who overcame a big hurt and learned forgiveness. Or I'm someone who pivoted and found new passions after my initial dream didn't pan out. This doesn't mean you erase the old chapters. They're still part of your story, but they're not the title of your story. The title might now be Resilient Rebuilder instead of Betrayed and Broken. From a psychological perspective, this stage often involves finding or assigning positive meaning to your experience. That could be through helping others, like, I went through hell, but now I can help others in similar situations. That gives me purpose. In fact, research on trauma survivors finds that those who eventually thrive often do so by turning their pain into meaningful action or understanding, like advocacy, creativity, or simply a wiser approach to life. For example, someone who lost a loved one to illness might volunteer or start a campaign in their honor. Someone who endured abuse might find strength in being a mentor or find strength in being a cycle breaker for their family. Someone who had a major failure might find humility and insight that make them a better leader in their next venture. Neurologically, when your identity shifts, your brain pathways shift too. The memories that were once touchy get reconsolidated with this new narrative context, like, that was the making of me, not the ruin of me. One forgiveness researcher, Everett Worthington, talks about deep forgiveness as actually involving a change in how you see yourself and the offender. You no longer see yourself as a victim, and you might even see the offender as a flawed human, not so different from you. That's identity level change. Similarly, truly letting go of self-blame might involve adopting an identity of, I'm human and fallible, but growing, replacing an old identity of, I'm a bad person. To actively cultivate stage 6, a great exercise is writing a letter from your future self or an autobiography snippet. Imagine it's, say, 5 or 10 years in the future. Write as if you are that future you who has long since let this go. Describe who you are and what your life is like. For instance, I am 35 years old, I am joyful and free. I hardly think about the divorce now, except to appreciate how much I've grown. I am a loving partner to someone who truly respects me. I have built a career I'm proud of. That painful chapter taught me resilience. Write it in past tense regarding the issue. Looking back, I realized the breakup actually steered me to find myself. I'm thankful I didn't give up on love. This exercise harnesses what athletes or performers do with visualization. It primes your brain to align with that identity. And there's evidence that imagining one's best possible self, a positive psychology exercise, increases optimism and well-being, which can propel you forward. Another part of identity work is checking your values. Often a crisis or loss will make you re-examine what truly matters to you. Maybe career used to define you, but after a burnout, you realize relationships and health are more important. So you form an identity around being a family-oriented or balanced life person now. Claiming that new identity helps solidify the letting go of the old overwork identity. In ACT therapy, clarifying values is key. You let go of struggling against the past so you can invest energy in what you value now and going forward. a practical approach. List your core values like integrity, creativity, compassion, adventure, etc., and see how you want to live those out in your life post-attachment. This shifts focus from what happened to you to what you want to do with your life. A subtle but powerful aspect of meaning updating is forgiveness of oneself and others at a deep level. We touched on forgiveness in part 1, but by stage 6, if applicable, you often reach a kind of peace. You've forgiven not just the specific act, but also let go of residual bitterness. Research indicates that forgiving people often undergo an identity transformation. They might go from seeing themselves as weak to seeing themselves as strong and compassionate for being able to forgive. They prioritize their own welfare over nursing the grudge. As Emiliana Simon Thomas said, forgiveness leaves space or opens the door for our own richer sense of self to drive our experiences, instead of letting a grievance filter into every aspect of identity. That's a beautiful description of this stage. You clear out the negativity that was coloring your self-concept, and your more authentic self, who is not defined by trauma or loss, can shine through and drive your life. Let's address an important point: limitations and reality checks. Does letting go mean you'll never feel pain or recall the past? No. Memories will still be there. You might feel a twinge now and then, but the idea is it no longer controls you. It's like a scar. It happened, and sometimes it aches in cold weather, but it's healed and part of you now without consuming your daily life. Also, updating identity doesn't mean you blame yourself for the past or say everything was good. It means you simply integrate the experience as one part of your larger life story, a story that is ongoing. You become the author of that story rather than a character trapped on one page. One more sign of stage 6 is when you can actually feel gratitude or at least neutrality when thinking of the once upsetting person or event. This may not always apply. Some things are just tragic, and you won't feel grateful they happened. That's okay. But often people say things like, if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be who I am today, and I kind of like who I am now. That reflects both meaning found and identity grown. Or at least you might reach neutrality. That's something that happened to me. It was painful, but it's in the past. It doesn't define my present. That sense of closure is priceless. It's the culmination of all the work: awareness, feeling, reframing, decentering or exposure, behavior change, and keeping aligned with a new life. To cement this stage, some engage in a symbolic milestone. Maybe they get a small tattoo that represents overcoming, turning a mark of the past into a symbol of strength. Or they planned a trip to somewhere meaningful as a new chapter celebration. Or they share their story with others publicly, like on a blog or support group, to mark that it no longer has power over them. It's now a story they own and can use for good. The science-backed path of letting go is not necessarily linear. You might loop through some stages multiple times. Sometimes we need to reprocess emotions even after reframing, etc. And it's certainly not a one-week process. It can be months or more. But these 6 elements, awareness, emotional processing, reframing, decentering or exposure, behavior change, and identity updating, give us a roadmap. They correspond to known mechanisms in the brain. You're literally rewiring neural pathways at each step. Early on, you opened the emotional wound and cleaned it. Then you applied new understanding. You practiced dealing with cues differently. You built new habits. And finally, you grew into a version of yourself that isn't defined by that wound. By following these stages, you're doing what one researcher described as briefly shortening those unpleasant emotional experiences instead of letting them go on and filter into so many aspects of our identity, thereby leaving space for a richer sense of self to guide us. In short, you're freeing yourself. Now, before we all ride off into the sunset of freedom, it's worth addressing some common pitfalls and myths that can derail this process. Not all advice out there is helpful. Some popular notions about letting go are actually counterproductive. So let's switch gears to debunking what doesn't work and why we often fall for those quick fixes.